Taking Stock on News Talk.
Thanks to Skillnet Ireland, driving business success through innovative training and upskilling.
This is Gavin McLaughlin with you on News Talk's Taking Stock, and we're joined now by Adrian Weckler, technology editor with the Irish Independent and Sunday Independent. Adrian, you're very welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Gavin.
5G is one of the most talked about technologies out there. What makes it so special in theory?
It's much faster, to the point where you can almost substitute it for broadband. I say almost because if you're a hardcore gamer, then you can't. But if all you want to do is watch 4K films or run laptops or computers or that kind of stuff, it's much, much faster than 4G.
And what's the infrastructure that needs to be put in place for it to be enabled so that people can use it?
Mobile towers, more of them, or converted ones that are already there for 4G and 3G. The three main networks in Ireland, which is Vodafone, number 1, Three, number 2, and Air, number 3, they are building out 5G in reverse order. So Air has the biggest network, 57% population coverage, then Three at around 50% coverage, and then Vodafone at under 50% coverage. Weirdly, some of the 5G coverage is being built out in rural areas at the moment, and that's because they're trying to capitalise on the lack of broadband there.
And who are the customers that are supposed to want it? I mean, you mentioned various cohorts there. We've heard about, punters having it on their mobiles. I also hear about, businesses in factories, the advantages it can deliver there. And it's also being targeted to some degree now at punters for their homes as an alternative to a fibre connection.
That's right. So two of the operators, Air and Three, are targeting people who don't have access to proper fixed line broadband. So Air just launched this week, for example, and it's selling a package. I think it's 45 quid a month or so. And the deal there is that it's a straight broadband replacement. For other people, the purpose isn't quite as clear. We've been told for the last 18 months that it will be a game changer for things like self-driving cars. We don't have those yet. We won't have those for at least 10 years. And also for virtual reality. Any year now, we've been told there's going to be a massive wave of us using virtual reality headsets. That hasn't quite arrived yet. So there is an argument to be made that 5G is slow burning, to put it diplomatically, or a bit of a flop, if you want to be crude, in the sense that while over a fifth of us, 22%, have 5G phones, that's to say, an iPhone 12 or a Samsung that is capable of 5G, only 4% of us have actually signed up to a 5G plan with an operator, because none of us are really sure what they're for.
Yeah, well, I mean, I won't be as diplomatic as you. It is a flop. Definitely listen to those numbers. It is a flop. Let's go into a bit more detail about it. Why do you think the take-up is so bad?
Because if you have an ordinary smartphone, or even if you have a wireless broadband at home, on 4G, you're getting up to about 100 megabits per second. To put that in context, that's enough for 2 or 3 people in the same house to all watch a 4K movie on Netflix or Disney Plus or whatever, or to run pretty much anything, any consumer application on a laptop or on your phone. Now, most of the operators are saying that it's their more expensive plans that have 5G. So you'll pay either an extra €5 or you'll be paying 35, 40, 45 euro a month for one of those plans. And punters are just saying, look, why would I pay more money for this? Now, you could look at the long view and say, in time, 5G networks will just naturally replace 4G networks, the same way that 4G it has over a period of years replaced 3G, et cetera, et cetera. But for the moment, nobody's quite sure what the killer application for 5G is, and nobody really is willing to pay more for a 5G plan at the moment.
Yeah, because you mentioned some of the things you can do with 4G at the minute. I mean, it does get to a point where for most people, anything beyond that is kind of no extra benefit. Why do you need it?
Yeah, now, there are one or two specific things that you do need to do if you do need 5G if you want to do. It's very good for gaming. If you are a serious gamer and you are absolutely determined that you want to play in your tournaments or whatever outside the house or inside the home with 5G, the latency, what's called latency, the time to respond between your phone and the network is much faster on 5G. That's the same reason why it's touted as a solution for things like self-driving cars, because if a car needs to talk to a nearby sensor or tower, that has to be in milliseconds and not 60 milliseconds, like 2 milliseconds. And 5G is very good for that. But these are real niche scenarios. This does not apply to me if I just want to watch a Netflix movie on my phone, or if I want to, download something or browse YouTube really, really quickly. 4G delivers absolutely all of that. So there is a sense where, for once, the first time in our lives, we now have a communication network that's actually faster than what we need. Usually it's the opposite, it's the other way around.
Well, I suppose that's a nice position to be in when you look at it like that. I wonder, Adrian, though, is it becoming more and more the case that this thing, which originally I think was seen as a game changer for users of mobiles, it's going to find itself having more of a role in providing broadband services to homes in rural areas. And Air, we've mentioned, are talking about this. Maybe that's the best use for this thing.
You could make that argument, but that's very, very time limited for one specific reason, because the National Broadband Plan now at the moment is building out in Cavan, Clare, Cork, Mayo, a few other counties. In the next 3 to 3.5 years, it will have something like 450,000 of those 540,000 rural homes done with full fibre broadband into the home. That's the best broadband you can get. So the window of opportunity for 5G to get into some of those homes at 45 quid a month or whatever it is actually really just a period of 10 or 20 months. It's the same problem that Elon Musk has with Starlink. By that point, Ireland will actually be a really advanced country in terms of home broadband. So my suspicion is that 5G will find its home in time, but that the applications just aren't there yet. I think it's really going to be things like self-driving cars that will really kick it off.
Our guest here on News Talk is Adrian Weckler, technology editor with the Irish Independent and Sunday Independent. Adrian, has it been doing better in terms of industrial uses from what you hear? You've mentioned some of them. And again, there's a lot of hype around this, but from talking to people in industry, are people actually using it as of now?
Not really, no. I mean, the demonstrations that we've had are kind of impressive. If you go to any telecoms trade fair, you'll see, one of the big networking companies like Ericsson or Nokia or Huawei or whoever, and they'll show you a guy sitting in front of an operations terminal who's controlling a digger, 3 countries away, and he's doing it in real time. That's really impressive when you look at it. You'll also see demonstrations of, for example, crucial medical information, or a surgeon performing remotely on somebody when they can't get out to somebody in the Australian outback or something like that. In real life, there are very few examples of that happening just yet. It may well happen. People look at industries like the mining industry as, where there might be big potential for that kind of thing. Construction industry as well, areas with more use of robotics, for example. But in Ireland, do any of the top 50 companies in Ireland, do they use 5G because it's 5G? The examples are few and far between.
The logic, I think, of this discussion, Adrian, is when you hear of the massive networks that the big three, Vodafone, Air and Three, are building out, kind of say maybe this is a strategic error by these guys.
Yes, you could, although from the other side, from their side, they would say that they didn't really have much of a choice. If you believe they're here for the medium and the long term, as in 10 to 15 years, everything we know about communications networks suggests that every couple of years, applications and devices come along that require much, much faster communications, much faster broadband, much faster mobile networks. So we still don't know that won't happen. It's just that it hasn't happened yet. Everybody thought when the iPhone 12 came out last September, when Apple finally got on board with 5G, that it would have some magic product or service to really kickstart 5G. And then we'd all finally see, that's what 5G is for. But they haven't really. And we're still waiting for that, killer application to come along.
Just to remind people of the stats again, 22% of Irish people have a 5G phone, but only 4% have signed up to a 5G plan. There's obviously all these conspiracy theories about it, Adrian. Do you think that has been a factor maybe in lessening uptake, or will it be?
I don't think so, because I remember attending several community meetings down in rural areas in particular about worries about 5G and radiation, and there's a new mast that was going to be beside a school. They're all kind of silent now. You don't hear much about that anymore. And you might also look at another stat from that Ericsson survey, which sort of prove it. 4% of Irish people believe that they have a 5G plan for their 4G phone. So they actually, like, of those 4% who actually have 5G, hardly any of them actually got it specifically to match with their 5G. So there is some demand for it there. I don't think people are put off by it. They just can't be bothered by it.
The other big macro issue about it as well has been the involvement of Huawei kit in the network. And Air, for example, is using it, although they say it's only in the less sensitive parts, and that they trust Huawei and they've got full confidence in them. But then you look at the UK, they've obviously banned Huawei from the network there. So where do you stand on this whole issue, Adrian?
Well, I mean, I have reported on it extensively, and it does seem that there are a few factors going on. I've spoken to enough senior security people from the US and the UK and most recently Australia to know that there are genuine concerns over Huawei kit from their perspective. They see Huawei as part of a larger China first, indivisible entity that that can't be completely broken apart. On the other hand, you talk to people like Air CEO Caroline Lennon, you talk to other very senior telecoms industry people here and in other countries around Europe, and they don't have an axe to grind one way or the other. But they say, look, a lot of the criticism that's being leveled here is actually technically inaccurate. There are a lot of the stuff that they're saying that can be done cannot be done on our network. So they may be just getting a good deal for the equipment. To be fair to Huawei, its 5G tech is generally considered to be at least as good, if not a little bit better than many of its rivals. But that geopolitical thing started under Trump, but it's very much still a factor. You mentioned the UK. They've effectively put a medium-term notice ban on Huawei from their entire network. And by the way, not just 5G, because Huawei's in 4G stuff as well. I can't see that being rolled out here, but it was enough to scare off Three. When Three launched its 5G network, they were going to go with Huawei, and they switched horses and went with Ericsson instead for that reason.
Yeah, that's interesting. I have to say, I'm surprised it hasn't been a bigger political issue here, but it just hasn't.
Like if you think about it, we tend to ride a lot of horses from a geopolitical perspective. Huawei, for example, I think they employ 500 people here. Ireland, we don't really have some of the geopolitical hang-ups or, I suppose, trenchant views that the UK would have, that Australia would have, the US would have. They're in the Five Eyes network, and they have a slightly overarching worldview about global security and China's place in it. So we don't really share that view. And by the way, neither do most other EU countries. So because we're an Anglophone country and we get the American press and the UK press, and we see and hear a lot of that their side of things. I suppose you could interpret the debate in one way, but there is another side to it, and we tend to side with the Europeans on that.
Finally then, break out your crystal ball for me, Adrian. Sketch out for me how you think this is going to develop over the next few years, and in particular, what do you say to one proposition I've read that we'll actually be in a position where we'll have 6G before we get to a point where 5G is kind of being broadly used?
Well, we already have a roadmap for 6G. 6G, we'll have the first working demos of 6G probably in 2026, 2027. All the big technology telecoms suppliers are working on it at the moment. if you're asking me when I think we will have complete population coverage of 5G, it has definitely slowed down in the last 6 months because of a lack of time. Like Vodafone typically Vodafone is usually the company that rolls out the quickest because it has the most business customers. It's also the biggest network. They don't seem to be interested. They're well under 50%. They don't advertise it much. They mention it as part of their plans, but it's not a big thing for them, and that's very, very telling. So I don't think we'll have 99% population coverage, which is the usual metric, for at least 3 or 4 years from now, and that'll be 6 years after it was launched.
Okay, we leave it there. That's Adrian Weckler, technology editor with the Irish Independent and Sunday Independent. Adrian, thanks for being with us.
Thanks, Gavin.
Taking Stock on News Talk.
Thanks to Skillnet Ireland, driving business success through innovative training and upskilling.